This short video is going to give us an introduction to what root cause analysis is, some of the methodologies and benefits from it. Root cause analysis. So effectively this comes from underlying areas of concern as opposed to the problem that we see above the surface. It's a very good method of identifying what the true root cause of a problem is. And that problem can come from various areas. It may be related to a health and safety incident, an environmental incident, a business process problem. The whole purpose of root cause analysis is really to get to the underlying contributing factors, the true reasons why the error occurred. Many companies, many people see a quick fix as the route to solving a problem. However, history has shown us that often these problems reoccur, and using this type of methodology is a great way of getting to the true understanding of the problem. A core competence necessary for delivering this type of insight is the ability to identify first and foremost the need to do a root cause analysis. Often people see and understand, they think they know what the problem is and quickly close something down, complete an investigation report, complete a non-conformance and corrective action report, thinking they see exactly what the problem is. So root cause analysis is a form of evaluation, and it can be done by various teams and often should be led through a protocol. And it's important that it involves heavy communication and engagement, and it's important that recommendations and support come from senior people in the organisation to understand the methodology and why it's been put in place. So the principles of root cause analysis is really about aiming corrective actions at the root cause, being more effective than treating the symptoms of the problem. To be effective, root cause analysis must be performed symptomatically and conclusions must be backed up by evidence. Not looking at something with blinkers on, in silo, and believing you understand that this was exactly what happened. In some cases it may be, but more often than not, there's usually more than one root cause that's resulted in this problem. That's one of the reasons why we use the term why and not how. So we may understand how something occurred that caused the problem, but we need to understand why those activities happened, why these things occurred that resulted in the problem. Generally there's a process that's followed. So define and make sure you define exactly what the problem is. It has to be quite clear that everyone in the team that's going through the root cause analysis really knows what the problem is. Gather data and evidence from various locations as required to ensure that you back up and have the evidence to support that you have defined exactly what the problem is. Then look at identifying issues that contribute to the problem. Find the root causes, identify which causes to remove or change so that you can prevent repeated problems. Develop solutions and recommendations that effectively prevent the repeating of the problem. Once you know what the contributing factors are, then you can develop solutions. Implement these solutions, recommendations and changes following possibly change management protocol, for example. Observe the recommended solutions and changes to ensure you understand that they have worked. Ensure you understand the effectiveness of them and have they really eliminated the problem. Thinking about a symptom approach versus a root cause approach. A symptom approach is often what you see quite quickly. Errors are often results of worker carelessness. We need to train and motivate workers to be more careful. We don't have the time or resources to really get to the bottom of this problem, so let's just train people and re-emphasize what the problem is. Looking at root cause, then we have to think about what are the contributing factors. Errors are the results of defects in the system. People may only be part of the process. We need to find out why this is happening and implement mistake proofs so it won't happen again. Not necessarily just relying upon that communication to humans. If it's critical, we need to fix it for good, or it will come back and ultimately burn us, cost us time, effort and money. So there is a requirement to invest in this type of methodology. There is a requirement that organisations understand the benefits of it and why you would want to invest in it. And ultimately, you want to be able to present back to the organisation a return on that investment. Proper control, monitoring and measurement of data will provide that. Let's think again about the root cause in terms of, let's think of a weed or a flower or a tree above the surface. Something that's very visible. The underlying causes are the roots which are below the surface. They're not that obvious to see and do require time and dedication to find them. Please remember also, when we talk about a root, often it is more than one contributing factor that has resulted in the error that we see or the problem that we see above the surface. There's a methodology around this root cause analysis of mapping the root cause. It refers to the causes beneath the surface, the symptoms of the causes that shows all the options of solutions. Don't focus on one single cause. It can make you be blinkered and look at an area that may only contribute a certain percentage associated to the underlying issue. A map helps us look at a wider spectrum and allows us to look at other contributing factors, even contributing factors that could have occurred some time ago. So the 3 basic steps of mapping: define what the problem is, why did it happen, and what will we do? There are a multitude of tools available to us. Many of these tools people will be aware of, but may not quite understand their relationship to root cause analysis methodology. Most of these tools are simple tools, they're easy to use, and there are lots and lots of different tutorials available on YouTube and other locations where you can understand how to use these if you've not already used them before. So some of the ones I'm going to talk about here are 5 Whys, Pareto Chart, Fishbone, or also known as Ishikawa diagram, charts or graphs. So 5 Whys, you may have heard about it and you may think you understand the concept, and it may sound really simple, but it is important that this is used as a fundamental tool within root cause analysis. Asking the 5 Whys has shown over many years in many investigations and root cause analysis that it plays a very important purpose. So, the worker fell. Why did the worker fall? There was oil on the floor, so there was a slip. Do we stop at that? Do we say, as a result of oil being on the floor, the person slipped and hurt themselves, that's us solved the problem. We just need to make sure that we tell people not to spill oil, or we need to ensure that our preventative maintenance team are aware of oil problems. Well, actually no, let's go a little bit deeper than that. So why was there oil on the floor? Not making assumptions, but why? We may identify that there was a broken part. Okay, why was there a broken part? Okay, so we're going this next level down and you can understand how this root underneath the surface is starting to spread out. We then find out when we speak to other people and investigate it, the parts keep failing. So we then investigate further and recognise that there needs to be changes in our procurement practices because we've known about this problem. People have understood that they do keep failing and we don't have mechanisms in place to ultimately prevent the person from falling. So some containment measures to protect people. But ultimately, that's just putting a band-aid on something. That 5th why that we have asked identifies that we need to put a different methodology in our procurement practices because we have not resolved any problems with the current supplier of the parts that fail. What about Pareto Charts? Pareto Charts is just another form of a chart that gives us some information that feeds into what some of those causes could be. By using this type of methodology, it allows us to focus in some of the key areas that bring about greater errors in our system. It may help us define and tackle the most fundamental areas, sometimes referred to as like the golden nuggets, the areas where we would get the best bang for our buck. Fishbone diagrams look at the cause and effect. So when we go down the location of the issue that this is caused by people, we make the assumption that it's because the people are not trained and we have to provide them with training to try and help this problem. But when we ask the 5 whys about the training, ultimately we may find out that we are retraining people, but the errors are continuing to occur. Why is that? Is the training effective? Are we communicating with the people that have been trained to understand that they understand what to do? They understand the basis and concept of the training? Are we then going further than that and thinking, well, competence is not just about training? Are we assessing the people using the training to see that they have the knowledge and skills to deliver what it is that's expected of them? Charts and diagrams are just another method to allow us to have the data at hand to help investigate inside the root cause analysis. There are ultimately sometimes barriers to root cause analysis. So prior to performing a root cause analysis, the team should anticipate some of these potential barriers. Management may be reluctant to support the team in what they're trying to do. They may want just a quick fix. Ultimately, it's down to the team to try and educate management why this is important, what the benefit is of it, and ultimately the long-term goal and return on investment. It may be that you have to think that some of the contributing factors in the issues that are found in the organisation may actually be down to management, may actually be down to the culture of closing things down quickly and not investigating them. It can be a difficult subject to deal with, and it can be subjective. So it is important how we communicate that information. It is also important to recognise that human factors is often one of the main contributing factors in any types of errors or incidents. Ultimately, we may say it's down to the training or the tool or the process, but when we use the 5 why, we may then find that ultimately it's been a human that has purchased that equipment that's not functioning correctly. It is a human that is performing the maintenance on that equipment, or it's a human that is meant to do the inspections associated to that. It may be competence of personnel, qualified and competence of the individuals that you hire in your business. It could be a lack of training. It could be a lack of ensuring that training is functioning correctly. The adequacy and the technology that you're using in your manufacturing or the tools you use in your servicing. And what about the culture? Like I said before, the culture could be there around not really reporting but closing down on things as quickly as possible. What about the morale in the business? Are people reluctant to report things? Are people reluctant to get involved and provide you with the information to allow you to do an effective root cause analysis? Lack of processes and procedures that can lead to people making mistakes. It may not be the person that's made the mistake that's the underlying cause of the issue. Ultimately, it could be the fact that management have chosen not to document processes and procedures on how something should be done. This is something we sometimes refer to as organisational knowledge. It may be that that knowledge lives in an individual, and that individual may have left the organisation, and others are trying to carry on those practices without really knowing fully what to do. So organisational knowledge is really important when it comes to the processes and procedures and the culture within an organisation and how things are done. So there are 7 best practices to remember about root cause analysis. Your root cause analysis is only as good as the info you collect. So it is really important that you involve as many people as you need to, and it's really important that there is a culture within the organisation that supports root cause analysis. Your knowledge or lack of it can get in the way of doing a root cause analysis. And therefore it is important to practice this, even using case studies to allow you to do that. And there are lots of examples of fantastic case studies available out there. And if you need something like that, please do get in contact with us, because we've got lots of supporting information we can provide. You have to understand what happened before you can understand why it happened. And interviews are not about just asking questions. They're about finding out what happened. So it's important that the types of questions you ask individuals are not closed questions. It's important they are much more open questions, and maybe taking them back a few steps. You can't solve all human performance problems simply just with discipline, training and procedures. Often people can't see effective corrective actions even if they can't find the root cause. And all investigations do need to be fairly equal. So it is important to follow the fundamental steps of root cause analysis, but it may be in some cases you have more focus and attention in some areas rather than others for a particular incident or error or investigation requirement. Think about 5 C's: criteria, condition, the consequence, the cause, and the corrective actions. So the criteria, so what is it we're there to do? Is there a law or regulation? Is there a policy or procedure or a best practice that's expected of the individual? What about the condition, the factual analysis of the process or the activity that exists? Do we actually believe it's being occurred as per the criteria? What about the consequence? Why the issue is important, and from a compliance or financial or operational standpoint, what reason associated to that is it important? What's the cause of it? The cause is which allows the condition not to emulate the criteria. Okay, so we need something fundamentally to be followed. The conditions that are set up has resulted in that not happening. What was the effect of that? And what really was the cause of it? Was it simply because of the criteria initially? Was it the condition in which it was carried out? Or were there other contributing factors? The corrective actions that are put in place, and often there are more than one required, it's important that we recognise that those could be a change in an organisation. And they can be anything from a small change to a large fundamental change. So putting corrective actions in place may not necessarily be a quick fix. It can often result in something that needs to occur over a period of time, and again require multiple areas feeding into it for it to be effective. For corrective actions to work and for you to demonstrate they work, there has to be a method of looking at the preventative side of it. So after the action's been taken, how effective is it? And looking back at that maybe in 6 months or a year's time. Data, of course, will hope to educate you on that, but ultimately you can use your internal audit process to see if the actions taken have been effective. So in summary, root cause analysis is a method to focus our efforts on the true causes of escapes or problems, so that we can ultimately prevent their reoccurrence. It helps us reduce errors, frustration, maintain customer satisfaction, reduce costs if done correctly, especially when you think about the costs of error. And I suggest if that's something you're not familiar with, please have a look at some of our other YouTube videos and blogs on LinkedIn, where the cost of error, similar to root cause analysis, has many underlying factors, and using root cause analysis can take away much of these causes to make us more effective and more efficient as a business. It's really important from a cultural point of view in an organisation that we recognise that each problem is an opportunity. A non-conformance, an incident, a customer complaint, a supplier issue, regardless of what it is, it can sound very negative. And if you have a culture in an organisation that see these things as very negative and don't like to report and be openly honest about them, then you breed a culture that tries to hide this type of activity, and therefore making root cause analysis fundamentally much more difficult to do. And lastly, it's really important that often, not always, often, it's human factors that are the main contributing factors inside an issue. When we use this methodology, then ultimately we can get back to where these human decisions or actions were taken that resulted in these problems. It is important to recognise, however, inside human factors, that these actions that are taken may be the consequence of other cultural activities. They may be the consequence of individuals, their mental health state, conditions going on outside of work, but it is important to recognise it. So, are we really fixing the cause of the problem, or are we just sorting the problem that we see above the surface? Are we asking why it happened and not just what happened? And have we considered all potential human factors? Thanks very much for going through this session with us. We'd like to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on LinkedIn. Thanks very much.